Parashat Vayeitzei. Thank you, Jan, for pointing that out to me. Parashat Vayeitzei, which is a very interesting portion. Vayeitzei on page 173 means, and he went out. And he left. What did he leave? Who left? We're talking about Jacob. If you look on page 172, you get a little map here. We got a map. We've mapped out the journeys of Jacob. He starts off in the south of Israel, where our community is going to be spending some time in May, God willing, this May coming, God's willing, soon. So we started off in Bereshitista in the south of Israel. See the map? Page 172. He went through Hebron, past Jerusalem, where he slept out of the dream of the ladder. Goes all the way up to Turkey, which is Haran. Haran is on the border of Turkey and Iraq. Mm-hmm. Then that's where he spends 22 years studying. Marrying his wives, 4 wives, and having 11 kids. 14 years he was studying Torah en route. We don't know exactly where that was. That was at the yeshiva of Shem and Aver, the son of Noah and the grandson of Noah. But it was en route somewhere. 14 years studying Torah, 22 years working for his father-in-law Lavan, until eventually he comes back. That's the journey. Now, Vayeitzei means that he left. He's leaving the Holy Land. It's a little traumatic for Jacob to leave the Holy Land. Why did he leave? We learned last week. Because his brother Esau wants to kill him. So it's under extraneous circumstances. Morning, Corey, Fran, Elaine, Lauren, and Winston. So he's leaving the Holy Land. He's going to Haran. Haran is not exactly a spiritual paradise. Haran means wrath, because it was just an evil place. They say Rebecca, his mother, when she was found in Haran, Eliezer was like the rose amongst the thorns. So here he was. Yaakov is leaving the Holy Land. His father never ever left the Holy Land. Remember why? Isaac never left the Holy Land. Why? Well, he was what?
He wasn't able to.
He wasn't allowed to. Why wasn't he allowed to? Because he was an offering before God. He was brought as an offering before God, as an Ola offering, and even though it wasn't finished with the binding of Isaac, he was considered, he had the status of a holy offering, which wasn't allowed to leave the promised land. So he never left the land of Israel. My grandfather was like that. He was my father's father, never left Israel. We said like him as a holy Jew. So let's read the story with some very interesting observations in the story on page 175. Jacob left Beersheba and he went to Haran. On the way, he came upon the place, Mount Moriah. This is the future Temple Mount. This is where Noah built an altar. This is where Adam was created. This is where his father Isaac was bound as an offering. He spent the night there because the sun had set. He took some stones at that place and placed them around his body and head, and then he lay down in that place to sleep. He had a dream, and he beheld a ladder standing firmly on the ground and sloping upward, its top reaching up towards the heaven. The angels of God who had accompanied him on his trip thus far were ascending it back toward heaven. So the angels of the land of Israel were leaving, for they were not permitted to leave the land of Israel. And other angels who were designated to accompany him while he was outside the land of Israel were descending it. This is the changing of the guard. Did you notice the King Charles of England played Mashiach, 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 the other day when they did the coronation? They had the marching of the guards of the royal guard. Maybe it wasn't the coronation, it was some other pompous event, but they played a Jewish song in honor of the Holocaust and honor of salute of the Jewish people. Interesting. England that was expelled the Jews for 400 years.
Sure, they were.
That's right. So they played a Jewish. Right. And behold, God was standing over him to guard him during his sojourn in Haran, and he said, "I am God. God of Abraham, your forebear, and God of Isaac." Isn't that awesome? God came to him. He miraculously contracted the entire land of Israel into the 4 square cubits under Jacob's body, and he told him. He folded the land beneath him. I told Abraham to walk through the land, but to you I promise that conquering it will be even easier than walking through it, as effortless as laying down. This is how I will give you the land upon which you are laying, to you and your descendants. That's us. The land of Israel, God promises Jacob, is going to you and your descendants effortlessly, hopefully soon. Your descendants will be as numerous as the dust of the earth. Now, this is pretty painful. Well, numerous as dust of the earth. What's the significance of dust of the earth? Maimonides tells us very, very significant. Sinning?
I thought that was negative.
Well, yeah, it is negative. I'll tell you why. Dust, or Maimonides tells us, not sinning, but something else, worse.
That's worse.
Dust, what do you do with dust? You trample dust. You walk upon the dust. So dust is trampled by all, but it ultimately wins over all who trample it because it buries them. And this is the promise to Jacob. Your descendants will suffer anti-Semitism. They will be trodden upon by all, but they will outlive all their enemies.
So far, so good.
Exactly. So far, so good. I mean, if that ain't prophetic, what is, right? But that is how Maimonides explains this verse, this promise to Jacob. Your children will be like the dust of the earth, which seems good. It is amazing. It basically means they're going to suffer but everybody's going to torture them. Everyone's going to trample over them. But they will bury all those who trample them.
So why didn't he say at this point, like he said before, and the stars in the heaven?
That was a different promise.
Was that
Stars of the heaven is a different promise.
That was to Abraham, but
That was to Abraham, yeah.
and it's different meaning because
What's the different meaning? What's your question? I'm going to get that in a second.
No, to Abraham he did, right.
So the way I teach the stars of the sky is that it's actually based on a teaching by the Maharam Lublin, the mayor of Lublin, who was the founder of Daf Yomi, the daily Daf, which I study on my own. The cycle of studying Talmud every single day, a double folio of double-sided page of Talmud, finishing in 7 years. So the Maharam Lublin explains like this: that what happened with the stars was that God asks Abraham to go out and count the stars. You remember that sermon I gave a few weeks ago?
that was one of the first sermons I heard. So
Right. It's one I live with, man.
And they were impossible.
It was impossible. Count the stars. How do you count the stars? But Abraham starts to count the stars, and then God stops him. He says, stops him. And then he says, Koi yezarecha, so shall be your children.
No, but it hasn't happened.
Which means that just like you had the courage to do the impossible, so too will your children be able to overcome all odds and do the impossible. That's what it means. It's not necessarily a blessing of quantity. It's a blessing of quality. That you will be able to go outside, to look up, and to do the impossible. And that's how I explained it over there in that particular teaching without getting into it. But the idea is that it's a matter of quality, being like the stars of the sky that are not subject to the laws of gravity. They're just not subject to the laws of this world. And we Jews have absolutely seen that fulfilled, where our success is far beyond our numbers and our longevity, our innovation, our everything, our endurance is far more than any natural projection. So that's the difference between the stars of the sky and the sands of the earth, right? Anyways, let's keep on going here. Verse 14. Your descendants will be as numerous as the dust of the earth, and you will spread out powerfully to the west, to the east, to the north, and to the south. This is the Rebbe's great song. Will spread out powerfully to the west, to the east, to the north, to the south, and to all the families of the earth. All the families of the earth will be blessed through you and through your descendants. Behold, you do not need to fear Esau or Lavan, your father-in-law, future father-in-law, for I am with you. I will protect you wherever you go, and I will bring you back to this land. For I will not neglect you by not providing you with food and clothing until I have fulfilled what I have promised Abraham, your grandfather, concerning you. For I intend to fulfill all the promises I made to Abraham through you and not through your brother Esau. This question came up yesterday in the JLI class. Why is it that everybody should be Jewish? And the answer is because God said that the blessing goes through Jacob, not through Esau. To the Jews, not through the Christians. Including my promise that Abraham's children will all remain true to their heritage. Esau's inheritance from Abraham will consist solely of the territory that was promised to him. Okay?
What territory would that be?
What?
What the territory that
Italy.
was
Europe. America. Jacob awoke from his sleep and said, God is truly present in this place, yet I was not aware of it. Had I known that this was a holy place, I would not have slept here. He became afraid, and he said, how awesome is this place? I don't know about the word afraid. I taught this yesterday in the JLI class. Awesome as opposed to afraid. He became filled with awe as he said how awesome
That's
is
the
this
same
place.
thing as the fear of God, right?
Exactly. That's what I told my class yesterday. That I don't think that he became afraid. What are you afraid of? He became in awe. Weak translation. This is none other than Mount Moriah, the future site of the house of God. What are you afraid of if it's the future house of God? It means that you're respectful. You're in awe. Okay. And thus, this is the gateway through which prayer ascends to heaven, passing through the heavenly temple. Wow. You just entered the place which is the gateway to heaven. That's not fear, that's awe. Which is figuratively situated above the side of the physical temple, meaning that the side of the future temple is the earthly locale most receptive to the spiritual consciousness of the higher worlds. Jacob arose early in the morning, took the stone that he had placed under his head, and he set it up as a monument. He then poured oil on top of it, consecrating as an altar. This place was already known as Bethel, but in light of the revelation he had just received, Jacob ratified this name. He named that place again Bethel, house of God, although the original name of the town was Luz. Jacob made a vow saying, if God will be with me and will protect me physically on this journey that I'm undertaking, and will give me bread to eat and clothing to wear, and will protect me spiritually from Lavan's evil influence, so that I will be able to return to my father's house untainted by sin, and if God will be both my God and the God of my children, that I will father in Lavan's house, in that they all remain true to their heritage and not rebel, as did some of my grandfather Abraham's and one of my father Isaac's children, that would be Ishmael and Esau. As he has promised me all this, the stone that I have set up as a monument will become a house of God. I will offer sacrifices on it, and addressing God directly, he said, I will set aside for you 1/10 of everything that you give me, as my forebears did. That's the origin of the Meiser, the tithe. Let me tell you, don't want to mess around with the tithe. You give a tithe, and God gives you 90%. You play around with your tithe, then God gives you a tithe. That's what it says in Jewish law. You make $100, you give 10. If you don't give 10, you give 1, then God will give you 1. So you don't want to mess with that. What's very, very interesting, I want to point your attention to the very first verse of this chapter. Page 174, go to the Hebrew. You see that Vayeitzei Yaakov Bereshava ve'elach Haran, and Yaakov went out from Beresheva, he left, and he went to Haran. Look at the next word, Vayifga b'makom. Vayifga b'makom. You see the Hebrew? Top line, Vayifga b'makom. And he came upon the place, which means he searched for the holiness. He's leaving the promised land, right? Mm-hmm. So he's seeking. So he came. Now, the reason why I say this is because I'm going to point your attention to a different verse, which is right at the end of the Parsha. Go right to the end of the Parsha, to page 198, very last verses of the portion. Now, during this portion, if we do a fly-through, Jacob comes to the well. He meets his future wife, Rachel. He works for 7 years. He falls in love with her. He then marries Leah by mistake, and he ends up marrying Rachel. And they have their infertility problem, so they give him each one a concubine. So now he has 4 wives. He has 6 sons from Leah, Reuven, Shimon, Levi, Yehuda, Yisachar, and Zvulun. Then he has the other kids, 11 kids in total. Then he is trying to make a business deal with his father-in-law, and this is all the genetics of the speckled goat, the blotched goat, the belted goat, and the ankle-ringed goat. Those are the ones that were going to him. The other ones were going to his father-in-law. All that story, which is amazing. I always teach that Gregor Mendel was not the father of genetics. It was Jacob. It's amazing. When you study this in terms of genetics, it's incredible, epigenetics. Then they run away. And as they're running away, they finally make a deal with Lavan. And now Jacob is finally leaving with his 4 wives, 11 children, and his tremendous wealth. And he's finally made peace with his father-in-law. He's heading to meet Esau now. So now look at the final verses of the portion. Chapter 32. Let's read it in the Hebrew first, in English. Very last, chapter 32, at the very bottom. Lavan arose early in the morning, kissed his grandsons and his daughters, and he blessed them. Then Lavan left and returned to his home. Lavan has been neutralized. Jacob continued on his way, and the angels of God went out to greet him and escort him back. Look at the Hebrew. Vayifgeu bo malachei Elokim. The angels of God came out to greet him. The same word, vayifga, paga means to meet, right? Vayifgeu bo means that they came to greet him, the angels, right? Look in the opening verse of the portion. It says, vayifga b'makom, and he had to seek out the holiness of the place. You see the difference? It's the same exact verb. On the way to the evil place, Haran, wrath, he has to seek out the holiness. And he eventually finds holiness. He has his dream with God and the whole encounter we just read about. But on the way back, now the angels come out to greet him. Holiness looks for him. He doesn't have to look for holiness. Let's just read it in the English. Jacob continued on his way, and the angels of God who were stationed in the land of Israel went out to greet him and escort him back. Since their mission was to bring him into the land of Israel, they were permitted by God to leave its borders for this purpose and replace the angels that had been accompanying him until then. So basically, the angels of Israel went out to greet him outside the borders of the promised land. They literally came looking for him.
They transferred.
Yeah, but they came looking for him, and that's the key. When Jacob saw them, he said, "This is God's encampment," and he named the place Machanaim, twin camps, and that is the last words of the verse. Now, this is rather surprising, because Jacob now is experiencing a tremendous spiritual descent. Think about it. He's leaving the cradle of Judaism. He's leaving the promised land to go to Palm Beach Gardens, a place where Torah is in semi-coma state, right? He's going to a place for Shabbos. Who ever heard of Shabbos? There's 80 people signed up to Frenchman's Creek's Shabbos golf tournaments, and 4 people, I think, they go to shul. 4, maybe 5. What's his name was telling me? Paul, and I'm sure you know him. Whatever, I don't say names in the video, but there's a guy from Frenchman's. He said it's remarkable. There's almost nobody going to shul on Shabbos, but the golf course is all Jewish, right? So this is the place that Jacob is going to. He's going to a place like Palm Beach.
They're also going there to pray.
That's why they go.
You on a golf course. It's a lot of.
They're going to meditate. They're going to meditate. I love it.
Right.
Beautiful. So think about it. You know, where would you rather spend Shabbos, in Jerusalem or in the golf course in Frenchman's Creek? I mean, like, is it even comparable? Right? But yet, Jacob, this is what Jacob is facing. When he's leaving, you think he's leaving the Holy Land. He's experiencing a great descent. Now the angels should be coming to greet him, right? And when he's coming from a place of wrath, of 22 years of not studying Torah, he was working like a donkey. It says in the verse over here, it says, I didn't sleep. I was working for you so long. He says to Laban, I was working for you nights like days. He says, it was how much I was working for you. This guy wasn't studying Torah too much. He was busy pasturing sheep and breeding them. So when he leaves that place after 22 years, and when he leaves that place, 4 wives, right? When he leaves that place, now the angels, he should be looking for them. But it's the other way around. When he leaves the Holy Land, he seeks out the angels. When he leaves faraway place, Palm Beach Gardens, now the angels seek him out. What's the reason? What do you think?
God wanted him to bring holiness.
Oh, here's a chassid.
What was it?
Marty a chassid. Love it. Meir Zalman. So Meir Zalman, say it again, please.
God wanted him to bring holiness to these unholy places.
Where was Jacob more comfortable? In Israel. Where was Jacob more needed? Yenfeld. He was the first shliach. That's the name of the Parashat Vayeitzei, and he left. You see?
So this is the parsha for the shluchim.
And that's why I
This is the
said
shluchim
the Rebbe sung Ufaratsta Yom Havaked Mavatzafein Vanegba Ufaratsta Ufara, and you shall burst forth to the west, to the east, to the south, and to the north. We sang that for hours at Fabrengen with the Rebbe, because that's what it's about. Hashem. It's beautiful to study Torah, but does God want you to study Torah all day long, or does He want you to go up and open an office in Wall Street, a hedge fund in Houston, right? And there to make a lunch and learn for half an hour in the middle of the day with some guys that barely know that they're Jewish. That's what he wants.
That's what I used to do.
Oh, you see, that's why you're a shliach too, right? So this is an amazing realization from the parsha. You look at the same word, opening word and closing words of the parsha. Where are you more holy? Where are you? Who are the angels looking for? Who's the celebrity for the angels? You know, in America, who's a celebrity? Anybody who's on a big screen. It doesn't matter what they're saying. It could be an anti-Semite. It doesn't matter. He's on the big screen. He's got to be something special. But the angels, they don't see celebrities like that. The angels, they say, what's a celebrity? Somebody that fulfills the will of Hashem. Somebody that overcomes his own comfort zones and does what Hashem needs. Don't ask what God can do for you. Ask what you can do for Hashem, said JFK, right? Sort of. Right? You see where I'm going with this, right? So this message is from the Rebbe. That was one of the early messages that the Rebbe delivered in 1950, 51. He's talking to a generation of Jews. No. As he's talking to a generation of Jews that were reeling from the Holocaust. right? 1950, 51, 52, 53. He's on generation. You know what he's saying to them? He's saying, okay, guys, I wanted you to go to Tulsa. He sent my great uncle to Nashville. He sent my grandparents to Milan. Milan!
Right.
Mussolini was there like 6 years ago. Okay? Who killed Mussolini? When did he die? I'm sure in the war or something, right? But this is fascist. Just 6 years ago. No, 1959 they went, actually. 1959.
No, that was
Yeah.
one of the videos.
Yeah, one of the
How difficult it was and how he was wanted to give up. And finally the Rebbe said no, and then things flourished.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that this Friday's video, we're going to see it this coming Friday, where the Rebbe says, he's talking to the parents of the Shluchim. Pretty sure
That's interesting.
he's talking to the parents of the Shluch, of the prospective Shluchim, and he says, I know you want to convince your kids that they're better off here in New York. And can you imagine, the Rebbe doesn't have kids of his own. Okay, and he's talking to the parents, and he says, can you imagine the empathy that the Rebbe needs to display? He says, look, how am I going to convince you? How am I getting exactly Shluchim are his kids? How am I going to convince you to send your kids to Vietnam? I mean, to Siberia. I want you to send your kids to Siberia. And he says, he's drawing on these lessons. Look at Yaakov, right? He's saying they might be more comfortable here. There'll be kosher milk down the street. Rabbi Yisrael yesterday was posting on our group chat, where can we find Chalav Yisrael milk? Our closest restaurant is who knows where. For me to eat lunch is an achievement because, lunch is a kosher restaurant. It's either 20 or 50. It's actually a restaurant on Okeechobee Boulevard, by the way. Kosher Chobi, it's called. Kosher Chobi, it's called. We should do lunch. So, but the next restaurant is in Boca, It's not so easy. And by the way, we've got, and let me tell you, life is good in Palm Beach Gardens. Life is good in Palm Beach Gardens. Talk to my friend in Jackson Hole, Wyoming, the guy in Boise, Idaho, and the guy in Slovenia, the guy just moving out of Zambia. Oh my Lord, heaven help him, right? So think about those guys, right?
What do they eat?
They eat food. So the idea here is, friends, that the Rebbe was saying to these parents, your kids will be more comfortable here, but they'll be fulfilling the divine mission there. And that's quite a statement to say to someone, right? And I'm going to read you the Rebbe's words now, okay? Where did Jacob prosper? In the Holy Land? He had nothing. He had nothing. He was 64 years old living at home. I mean, think about that for a second. He was 64 years old. He was still living at home. There's something wrong with that picture, right?
He wasn't living with his mother.
He was living with mom and dad. His mother tells him to go out and steal the blessings and stuff, right? But then he comes back. Now he's a man. He has 4 wives. Take that. He has 4 wives. He has 11 kids. He has countless flocks. Now he's a man. He's grappled with angels. He's grappled with men, right? He's beating up Esau. He's beating up Lavan. He's negotiated with the most wicked, most cunning swindlers of the generation. And now he comes back a wealthy man. Where does he make his wealth?
It's left outside.
Outside. I want to remind you what Abraham was told in the covenant of the parts. We studied this a few weeks ago. God doesn't give Abraham a choice. He doesn't say, well, would you prefer to send your kids to 400 years of torture and then they come out wealthy, or just cold quits? He's not given that option. He's given the courtesy of a memo. I'm letting you know your kids are going to go, they're going to be tortured for 400 years, but don't worry about it. They'll come out with great wealth. He's giving him the heads up, right? Because we're not given that option. If we were ever given that option, we'd all say, thank you, but no thank you. Or we'll pass, right? But Abraham, this is the template for all of us. It's not a history story here. The story of Jacob is not a story of just to keep us occupied in Shul and Shabbos. It's not just something for us to read, right? That's not what this is about. This is a template for our lives, where God is saying to Abraham the same thing as Jacob is experiencing on a personal level. Your kids are going to suffer for 400 years, but don't worry, that's their purpose, and they'll come out with great wealth. We explained that it's not only physical wealth, gold and silver and resources that they had, but it was more importantly the spiritual fulfillment and the purpose for which they were sent down to this world, which is why we said then we're not allowed to go back to the land of Egypt ever again, because there's nothing for us to do in the land of Egypt. It's all been cleansed. Same thing with Jacob. When he comes back now he comes back a rich man. Not only rich, but he's fulfilled and he's got a legacy coming. right? He's got his future all restored. He's built the 12 tribes of Israel. Where does that happen? The Rebbe says it happens, the success spiritually and physically happens there in Haran. And to quote the verse, Vayifrei Tza'ish me'oid me'oid, and the man was exceedingly, exceedingly prosperous. That happens when you do what God wants from you. Every Jew at the time that he finds himself in the land of Israel, closed, insulated in matters of holiness, of spirituality, concerned only with his own development, as great as he'll ever be, will never reach the level, says the Rebbe, the higher level, like this one, like the Jew who goes out to Haran, to Chicago, or to Palm Beach, or to Turkey, right? When a Jew goes out to the world and he deals with other Jews and he brings them closer to Yiddishkeit, and you don't have to be a card-carrying shliach to be able to do that, because you already are a shliach of Hashem, to be able to bring this mission to its fulfillment. When you go out there, then you will merit great success physically, financially, and spiritually, and you'll reach to the highest levels.
Just let them to Kuban, that's all. Bring people.
That's right. That's
among
exactly
other
right. That's what we are. We're an embassy.
Right.
Bring them to the embassy.
things. Bring them here.
We'll give them, what's the word, amnesty?
Amnesty.
And hope. Amnesty and hope.
Yeah. Let me see the answer. My grandparents, S-Bug from Melbourne, Australia says, my grandparents left Hungary and came to Australia, not emissaries, but just Jews who traveled across the world to safety. Okay. Well, the goal is, friends, that we have to, asylum, says Elaine. Our goal is to reach out to one more Jew. If you're living in Mirasol, if you're living in the beach, then you've got to reach out to your neighbor and ask them, do you have a mezuzah? Why don't you have a mezuzah? Why do you need a mezuzah? I'll explain to you why you need a mezuzah. Maybe better yet, I'll bring my rabbi to explain to you why you need a mezuzah. And we'll have a drink on the porch, and we'll put the mezuzah up together, right? Now you're being a shliach, right? And we're here to help you, right? We're here, you got the resources, right? But you're the Jacob, and you got to go out to Har, and you want to make money. You go and influence another Jew. And just like Jacob, you'll prosper very exceedingly, exceedingly much. All right? Shkaya Chavra. That is the lesson for the day.
Oh,
That's
okay,
the koach.
Dan, I'm going to show up at your house today.